Hello and welcome to Northwest Newsweek. We open on the provincial election trail. NDP leader Andrea Horwath was in Thunder Bay this week for a campaign event at the Regional Health Sciences Centre. There, she spoke about her party's healthcare promises. Corey Nordstrom has more on Horwath's visit.
Andrea Horwath, joined by regional candidates Lise Vaugeois and Judith Monteith-Farrell, arrived at Thunder Bay's Regional Hospital. Horwath's New Democratic Party intends to invest heavily in the healthcare sector. Over the next 10 years, the party plans on spending $19 billion on hospital expansion, as well as investments towards repairing and replacing aging northern hospitals. Horwath is prepared to get to work immediately on overcrowding facilities, as well as funding to basic hospital needs if necessary.
If it's clear that the administration here needs capital investment to meet the needs of this community, we will absolutely be at the table. In fact, we've made a commitment to bring 2,000 new beds online as soon as we take government.
Horwath says she also plans to follow through on the Liberals' funding of Thunder Bay's new cardiovascular surgery program. Another main topic up for discussion was the region's need for long-term care homes. The NDP leader promised to increase long-term care beds available by 15,000 over the next 5 years and 40,000 by 2028. Thunder Bay knows all too well about the lack of available beds, with overcrowding at all of the city's long-term care facility. Horwath notes the relationship between the two issues.
If we are building the long-term care facilities here in Thunder Bay that are necessary to meet the need, those 90 ALC patients that are currently in the beds here would be in long-term care. If we had the home care services that are necessary to meet the needs of people who don't need to be in long-term care, then again that takes pressure off of the hospitals.
Horwath also took the opportunity in Thunder Bay to spend some time with the region's NDP candidates at the CLE's Country Market. The NDP leader spoke with vendors as well as some locals about her platform. Corey Nordstrom, TBT News.
With support for her party continuing to wane across the province, Liberal leader Kathleen Wynne paid a visit to a long-held party stronghold this week. Wynne made her first official campaign stop in Thunder Bay. She says she's confident local MPs Michael Gravel and Bill Morrow will hold on to their seats in Queen's Park. Wynne also trumpeted a new campaign promise to increase funding for the Northern Ontario Heritage Fund.
Thunder Bay Superior North has been a Liberal-friendly riding for a long time. And watching Kathleen Wynne enter a packed rally at Michael Gravel's campaign office Wednesday evening, one could easily believe that's still the case. But with Wynne's party squarely in third in the polls just 2 weeks before the election, there's a sense that Gravel and Thunder Bay Atikokan MPP Bill Morrow could be swept up in what's seemingly become a province-wide desire for change. Flanked by the pair in front of a pro-Liberal crowd, Wynne said she doesn't buy it.
I don't believe it. You know, there are polls and there are polls. These are two of the hardest working members that we have in this province.
The Liberal leader touted her budget promise, which was reiterated in Sudbury just hours before her Thunder Bay stop, to boost funding for the Northern Ontario Heritage Fund to $150 million, a 50% increase.
If we look at the evidence of what the investments through the NOHFC have done, the thousands of jobs that have been created, the great businesses, the great partnerships with entrepreneurs that have allowed businesses to thrive and economies to do better in the North, I think that's all the evidence that we need to do more of that.
4 years ago in Thunder Bay, Wynne said she wouldn't consider her time as Premier a success without substantial progress in the Ring of Fire. Despite much criticism over a perceived lack of movement, she insists the massive chromite deposit is closer than ever to being mined, thanks to ongoing government cooperation with industry and Matawa First Nations.
It is absolutely a success that we have an agreement with 3 of the First Nations, that planning is now happening. It's not something that will happen in the future. The road is being planned, and that is the key to getting the Ring of Fire developed. So it is exactly where I wanted us to be at this point.
She'll find out if voters agree on June 7th.
A new report suggests mercury poisoning has played a part in severely damaging the health and well-being of people in a Northern Ontario Indigenous community.
It's a shame on Canada, shame on the province that we are treated so inhumanely.
The expert report is the first of its kind on grassy narrows. It follows years of concerns over the consumption of fish from nearby lakes and rivers. The report suggests people in grassy narrows generally suffer from worse health, more severe food insecurity, and more suicidal tendencies than those in other First Nations. A number of recommendations have been made to improve the situation. The NDP's Kenora Rainy River candidate has apologized for comments and an image he posted online several years ago about Liberal leader Kathleen Wynne. This image and subsequent post, which shows Kathleen Wynne's head superimposed upon someone being arrested, was shared by Glenn Archer. In a news release, the Liberals noted the NDP were quick to condemn the Progressive Conservatives for similar rhetoric, but were silent when one of their own engaged in the activity. Archer has apologized for the post and says he made it several years ago.
At the time, I thought it was humorous, and I thought it was indicative of my views at the time, being a Labour activist, and my upset at the time. I did not know I'd be running for Parliament at the time. So, of course, now with parliamentary language, I'm very upset that I'd made those comments.
We've talked about, our values, and he shares our values of respect and dignity, and he regrets that those comments were made. And I've asked him to ensure that going forward, he's reflecting the values that we share, and that those are around respect and dignity for everyone.
And Archer is the subject of one of our candidate profiles. As the June 7th election draws closer, we want to give voters a look at those vying for provincial office. Since its creation in 1999, Kenora Rainy River has been an NDP stronghold. First held by Howard Hampton until 2011, when Sarah Campbell took over the seat at Queen's Park. Now Archer hopes to keep the riding shaded orange on the map. Tiffany Goodwin brings us this candidate profile.
There's a new name on the ballot this year for the NDP in Kenora Rainy River, and that name is Glenn Archer. A corrections officer in Kenora for almost 20 years, Archer has also been a workers' advocate through OPSU, which he says has given him insight into some of the issues affecting the region, adding many of the concerns held by organized labor are all for workers in the province.
A lot of the things that I was fighting for was protection of our services, fighting to keep Service Ontario open, making sure that we have social awareness when it comes to beer and wine distribution, and that we don't just have it in every corner store, that we have, we have an onus upon us to protect everybody in our province.
Despite being relegated to third-party status since 1995, Archer says many in the riding are receptive to the New Democrats.
By and large, people are very much receptive of our campaign. A lot of times I don't even have to talk to them about our issues. They bring them to me. Key to that in our area is healthcare. A lot of people are very frustrated with our current system. The Liberals had 15 years to fix it, and it's just been more and more crumbling.
Indigenous relations are also a focus for Archer. Kenora Rainy River has several First Nations and treaty organizations located throughout the region. He says relations between First Nations and the province must be on a government-to-government basis.
We want to make sure that the Truth and Reconciliation Committee recommendations are still, front and center, that we address all of the issues that were brought forward.
Archer says the party is also committed to providing more resources for missing and murdered Aboriginal women and girls. Tiffany Goodwin, TBT News.
After representing the federal Kenora riding for 7 years as an MP, Greg Rickford wants to represent the region once again, this time on the provincial level with the Progressive Conservatives. Kenora Rainy River hasn't sent a PC member to Queen's Park since the days of Leo Bernier in the late 1980s. Rickford believes the province has neglected the region for years and vows to change that if elected. Adam Riley has more.
We're worried about our province.
Greg Rickford is back on the campaign trail. This time he is looking to represent residents at the provincial level in the newly redefined riding of Kenora Rainy River. The former federal cabinet minister says residents he has spoken with while canvassing in the region all say the same thing.
If you haven't heard hydro, if you haven't heard healthcare by now, if you haven't heard infrastructure, which has taken a sharp drop off since I was the MP serving this region, they either have stopped or they don't work.
Rickford says he is astonished at the issues in healthcare for the region, specifically the lack of access, and uses the example of an accident he faced recently with a chainsaw.
Where with the exception of good physiotherapy at Lake of the Woods Hospital, everything else was done outside of our district. If we have injuries related to forestry accidents and the likes, and we have to leave our region, the forestry capital of the country, we've got problems.
Highway twinning is another issue Rickford says he wants to tackle if elected, especially in Kenora-Rainy River. He says highway construction falls under the purview of the province. 7 years ago, Rickford, then an MP under Prime Minister Stephen Harper, announced the highway would be twinned. But to date, no work has been completed, despite the ongoing work between Thunder Bay and Nipigon.
That's because there's Liberal seats out in Thunder Bay currently being held, right? They don't know who we are and they don't know where we are, and I hear it at every single doorstep, and it's not something that upsets me. I see it as an opportunity.
Ontarians are set to go to the polls on June 7th. Adam Riley, TBT News.
Coming up after the break, we continue our coverage of the provincial election in Kenora-Rainy River, profiling the Liberal and Green Party candidates. It's been more than 2 decades since the Liberals held power in Kenora-Rainy River, but that hasn't deterred candidate Karen Kijik. The riding has been held firmly by the NDP for years, and the PCs have a familiar face in the running, so Kijik is in for a fight. Tony Brar has this candidate profile.
In every election since its creation in 1999, voters in Kenora-Rainy River have placed the Liberals in second and third place. But this year, the party has put faith in Karen Kijik. A band council member for Shoal Lake 39 and an outspoken advocate for Indigenous issues and violence against women, Kijik is looking to break the streak of NDP representation for the riding. She says there is one important factor which prompted her to seek office.
I felt that our voice here in the North needed to be raised, and issues and concerns needed to be brought forward in a strategic way on behalf of everyone in Kenora-Rainy River.
While making the move from band politics to provincial politics may sound like two different fields, Kijik says many issues that she is hearing about while campaigning are the same issues she faced as a band councillor.
Access to health services, right? And then the cross-border issue with Manitoba, being able to access those services there. So that's a priority that I share with the residents, economic development, right? Everybody wants to see the highway twinning.
Kijik is also adamant about preserving the work and partnership at the experimental lakes area and says more investment in education and access to affordable housing is needed. Now, despite provincial polls showing the Liberals in a distant third, Kijik says residents have been open to hearing about the party's platform and is optimistic about winning the riding next month.
I think people are getting behind the person, right? My experience also will lend well to bringing those issues forward, and that I'm going to be here in the riding. I'm going to be accessible. I am not going to run away from issues.
Tony Brar, TBT News.
A relatively low-profile party in the Northwest, the Greens, still hope to make an impact in the election with Kenora Rainy River candidate Ember McKillop. Adam Riley has the details in this candidate profile.
We are trying to approach governance from a completely different angle.
That is one of the many messages Kenora Rainy River Green Party candidate Ember McKillop wants to let residents know as she campaigns the region in the lead up to the June 7th election. As a resource teacher in Dryden, McKillop says she has been able to see the deficiencies in the education system. She says the mentality of using the population and not the needs of an area for education priorities have put the region at a disadvantage.
The conditions that I see in my job, and not just as a teacher, like that's, those working conditions have certainly gone downhill. But the lives of the students in my class, or in the classrooms that I work with, and the families that they come from, they're really suffering.
McKillop says the Green Party is a relatively new party to the region, but emphasizes the party is a viable alternative to the Liberals, PCs, and the NDP. She says for years those elected parties have only been tweaking a system that, in her opinion, doesn't work very well. But she believes the Greens have a solution.
We need to look at things from using basically three pillars: that people, jobs, and the environment are important, and that we can't support one without that harms the others.
Mental health is also an issue in the Northwest, which McKillop says needs a new approach.
We need an approach that is more holistic, that covers the family, covers those issues of poverty and addictions. We can't do much for the kids if the family remains, in distress.
Adam Riley, TBT News.
Moving over to Thunder Bay, Atikokan, longtime MPP Bill Morrow faces 5 challengers this time around. Jonathan Wilson profiles the candidates in that riding.
Bill Morrow has been the MPP for Thunder Bay Atikokan since 2003 and has been a cabinet minister since 2014. And before joining the provincial ranks, Morrow was a city councillor in Thunder Bay for 6 years.
From transitioning to city council to an MPP, I think I learned early on that as much as I enjoyed my work as a councillor in Northwood Ward, you learn early that your ability to impact your community is certainly enhanced if you're a provincial member, and when you consider the files that are within the provincial purview and control. And so that's really what the genesis of it is, and why I continue to look forward to trying to do it.
NDP candidate Judith Monteith-Farrell spent her career as the regional rep for the Public Service Alliance of Canada. She has many things on her list to change when it comes to Northwestern Ontario, with some of the main points being hydro, the cost of living, and healthcare.
Going door to door, it's very clear that there's been a big failure to meet the needs of the hospital and medicine in Northwestern Ontario. People have story after story about being disappointed and believing that doesn't need to be that way, and that they remember a time it wasn't that way.
It's been several decades since the Progressive Conservatives have had a candidate elected in the riding, and Brandon Postuma says he's the fresh face that Thunder Bay Atikokan needs, and he plans to fight for revitalization in the north.
People are sick of being dictated to. I mean, depending on what party you work with, sometimes there is people that feel like they have to toe the party line. That's fine for them, but for me, it's about having a strong voice at Queen's Park that no matter what will represent the needs of the north, and people feel like that is not happening right now.
The other candidates in Thunder Bay Atikokan are John Northey for the Green Party, David Bruno for the Northern Ontario Party, and Dorothy Snell for the Libertarian Party. Jonathan Wilson, Northwest Newsweek.
Coming up next, a close encounter with a pair of lynx in the Norwick area caught on video goes viral. A video of two lynx squaring off near Dryden is at the center of a social media frenzy. Ed Trist recently captured the unlikely encounter, and the video is now going viral worldwide. Carmen Wong has the story.
Ed Trist was planning to catch a few minnows for fishing, but instead caught a rare sighting of two lynx shrieking at each other. He was with his girlfriend and daughter at the time when they came across a cat near Avery Lake, which is 30 minutes east of Dryden. They stopped and watched the lynx for about 10 minutes. Trist says he decided to stop and record the encounter.
It was just kind of a really cool experience, and I wanted to share it, and basically to my friends. And then it just, like within an hour, there was 10,000 views, as soon as I posted it.
Trist and his girlfriend posted the video on their respective Facebook accounts, and the amount of responses they've received have been overwhelming. The video has been circulated across all social media platforms. Trist says he has been contacted by people all over the world who want to buy the rights to the video.
We have, over 9 million views. I have over 100,000 shares. It's just absolutely crazy. Different news media contact me, people wanting to buy the rights to the video. It's absolutely nuts. So my phone has not stopped. I've had 2,000, at least maybe 3,000 friend requests.
And with all the attention his video has received, people have been asking about the outcome of the lynx's argument. Trist says he is no lynx expert, but thinks that the cats were two males competing for a female. He also says he hopes the cats made up after the fight.
Lots of people are asking me online what happened. I really don't know what happened. Maybe they kissed and made up. I don't know.
After they finished recording, the trio drove right past the cats who remained focused on one another. Trist says he has not seen the lynx since. Carmen Wong, TBT News.
What a video. Well, the municipality of Greenstone has lost one of its best-known landmarks. The historic Catholic Church of the Infant Jesus in Long Lac was destroyed by fire Wednesday evening. The church was situated on a scenic point of land on Long Lake, just off Highway 11. It was built in 1949 after the original church burned down the previous year. The Jesuit parish served the town of Long Lac and nearby First Nation communities. The church was closed in May of 1997 and had been abandoned since that time. It was scheduled to be demolished in September of 2008, but was saved at the last minute by the nearby Long Lake 58 First Nation, which was trying to acquire funding to restore the church. The Greenstone Fire Department was on the scene on Wednesday, but fire crews were unable to save the structure. The cause of the blaze is still under investigation. A Shabandawan family has been left homeless due to a devastating house fire. Emergency responders, including Shabandawan and Conmee firefighters, were called to the home on Highway 11 just before 2 o'clock Monday morning, but were unable to save the residents. According to Thunder Bay OPP, all 5 of the family members inside were able to escape the flames. However, one male was transported to hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. There's still no word on what caused the fire. A brief taste of freedom for an area woman who escaped from her correctional facility in Edmonton last weekend. 26-year-old Keisha Spade, who was convicted in a 2009 murder at a reserve near Pickle Lake, is now back in custody. Spade is currently serving a life sentence for second-degree murder and would have been eligible for parole next year. She was just 18 years old when she was arrested for the stabbing death of her cousin, Mariah Wesley, on the Mishkegogumang First Nation. Spade was convicted in 2011 and was serving out the remainder of her sentence at the low-security Buffalo Sage Wellness House in Edmonton. She walked out of the facility on Saturday night, and the Correctional Service of Canada issued an alert asking for tips on her whereabouts. The agency issued an update Tuesday morning saying Spade is now back in custody. And that'll do it for this edition of Northwest Newsweek. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.